There remains tremendous urban poverty. The big cities like Kinshasa or Lubumbashi, people are very, very poor there. And I'm not talking about the type of poverty that we often describe in the developed world about not being able to buy a new car, new clothes. These are people that don't have money to buy medicines to send their children to a hospital or to get health care.
People in Europe, for example, spend more on the lottery than they spend on ODA. ODA per European citizen is about 30 euros per person per year. So it's not a lot.
One of the major problems today is that we all say that 50 billions of aid, European aid in that case, is too much money. If you want to get people out of poverty, to live in dignity, to be dealing and addressing their own life, you need higher investment than the 50 billions euros that we provide through aid.
The commitment that the European Union took is to allocate 0.7% of its gross national income to development aid. So far, the EU has allocated half of that, so it's not good enough. But we need to put things into context. The EU went through one of the biggest economic crises ever.
0.7% of ODA of GNI is a very, on the one hand, ambitious target compared to what giving has been in the past. On the other hand, it's a very low target when you look at the magnitude of inequities around the world.
The first thing that I think is worth noting is that the 0.7 commitment predates the MDGs. It comes from a UN resolution from the 70s, so it was agreed already 40 years ago, and the Millennium Declaration is 14 years. So that predated, and then it's been reaffirmed in different declarations in the Monterrey Consensus and at EU level in the Barcelona commitments and many others. The percentage as such is really tiny if we compare to the total public expenditure of many national governments, and if we compare with the money that governments have invested in bailing out the European banks.
Generally speaking, there's been a trend of reducing aid even before the financial crisis in 2007, 2008, 2009, but definitely the financial crisis from 2007 to 2009 and the subsequent austerity policies since then have basically cut support for reaching that target. The Netherlands is still cutting budgets, education sectors are cutting their budgets and so on. So if you're talking to somebody in Belgium or the Netherlands or another country whether they should increase aid when funding to their own universities and health systems is being cut, which one are they going to choose, right? It's hard to generate political sort of enthusiasm for that objective when the more important issues for Europeans are under attack.
It is not the crisis that led to this. It was before already. They never lived up to their commitment. We at the Development Committee were dismayed to see this lack of consistent attitude towards your own promises. The reason for that is, of course, internal pressure within member states. Populations who say, listen, give the money to us instead of to the poorer countries. You see how difficult it is for David Cameron in Britain to raise the budget of development aid, which he does. And you have to commend the British government for that. It's very difficult amidst the huge opposition against this decision. It's a sound decision. It is an investment in poor countries that leads to stability, it leads to less refugees, it leads to economic growth, it leads to economic growth in our countries. It is our chance, their future.
Oxfam has done research to show that actually to reach the goal by 2015, there is a €42 million funding gap for EU member states to reach. Unfortunately, you can see that traditional donors who have tried to reach this target, such as the Netherlands and Belgium, have actually decreased their funding. Surprisingly, public opinion within Europe has shown that at least 84% of EU citizens support development assistance. So the political will versus what the EU public says does not correlate.
Well, the EU already does a lot in terms of trying to encourage discussion and produces an annual report on how the EU member states are doing, which is, so it's a sort of name and shame approach, if you like, a peer review approach. They can't sanction them, no, they're not in a position to do that. They're not legally binding commitments, so they're not able to take them to court or something. But I think the internal discussion in the group and the reviewing amongst each other and so on is a big incentive.
I think a lot of these issues about countries reaching the 0.7% of ODA as per the global commitment is about informing their constituents, their citizens of the country, what this actually does for them. Because spending somewhere else actually helps your own economy, because then you have more partners to deal with in terms of trade and exchange of goods, services, people through migration in terms of skills transfer, technology transfer. So this is why the MDGs are important, but this is also why ODA is important, but also for people to understand that ODA is not that much, and it actually is not enough to tackle the world's problems in developing countries.
By next year, it will be extremely difficult to achieve this 0.7, and we believe, as the European Union, that we have to achieve this, and we still have a year to do that. Why do we believe that? First, because it's a commitment, so it's about the credibility of the EU, but as well, it's about trying to show that development aid assistance, it's not only about charity. We have to do it because it's a moral obligation and justice, so it's possible. You already have 5 countries that achieve them. So we know it's not going to be easy, but I think it's our role to try to respect as much as possible this commitment.
I don't know why we are holding on to that promise that is 40 years old and we are not keeping that promise. Either we have to drop the promise and become honest and say, sorry, we are not going to have that, or we fulfill it tomorrow, because it's 0.7%. The crisis cannot be blamed. It's pocket money, it's change, pocket change for rich countries. It's not an issue of financial crisis or economic crisis, it's an issue of political will.
We want them to achieve that target because we were not the ones that set the target for them. They themselves set those targets. And I think, therefore, they are morally bound to observe targets that they themselves have pronounced.